Light fractured in the celestial realm. A being of dawn, clothed in brilliance, stood before the throne, and then was not. The story most of us carry is simple: pride, rebellion, a fall from grace. But what if that moment never happened as told? What if the lie is woven into the very fabric of how we see evil? What follows is a hidden layer of the scriptural record, one that pulls you inside the throne room, not as a distant observer, but close enough to feel the shudder move through the firmament. The being called Lucifer, light-bearer, turns, and in that turn, centuries of doctrine crystallize. But here is what most never stop to examine. In the original Hebrew of Isaiah 14:12, Lucifer is not a name. It is Helel ben Shachar, a title meaning morning star, son of the dawn, applied poetically to a fallen Babylonian king. The text never calls him an archangel. It never describes a pre-cosmic rebellion. That identity was grafted in centuries later. The character you think you know begins as a metaphor for human hubris, not a divine being cast from heaven. That single detail pulls the ground out from under everything familiar. So where did the cosmic rebel actually come from? To understand, you have to step into the world of Second Temple Judaism, a time of apocalyptic fever and cosmic speculation, where the stakes were not about a single angel's pride, but about the origin of evil itself. Forces were at work: the memory of Babylonian exile, the pressure of Greek philosophy, and a desperate need to explain suffering. Into this void step texts like the Book of Enoch. Here, the concept of a fall migrates, attaching not to a light-bearer, but to a group called the Watchers, beings who descend to earth, corrupt it, and are bound. Lucifer, as a singular satanic figure, is absent. The cosmic drama was being rewritten before it was even fully formed. The role that Lucifer ended up playing in this tradition is one of consolidation. Early church fathers, Origen and Tertullian among them, faced a genuine problem. They had Isaiah's king Ezekiel's oracle against the king of Tyre, Ezekiel 28, and the Enochian Watchers. They fused them. Lucifer became the archetype for all rebellion, a single narrative anchor for three very different stories. But in the original layers, these are separate threads. I remember when I first traced this fusion through patristic writings. The theological stitching was so deliberate, it felt like watching a myth being assembled in real time. The role assigned to Lucifer, to be the primordial source of sin, is a theological innovation, not a textual certainty. It served to collapse a messy, multivocal tradition into a single enemy. From there, the picture grows stranger still. Consider the Dead Sea Scrolls, specifically the War Scroll from Qumran. It speaks of the sons of light against the sons of darkness, led by the angel of darkness. This figure is not called Lucifer. The conflict is presented as a present and future struggle, not a settled past event. The cosmology here is fluid. Evil is a pervasive force, not a single fallen star. This shifts the weight considerably. If the fall of Lucifer was a definitive prehistoric event, why do these texts, so consumed with cosmic war, never name him? That absence says more than most commentators are willing to admit. It suggests the story we inherited was still taking shape, its pieces not yet assembled into the tidy fall narrative we recite. The Enochian tradition, preserved in First Enoch, becomes the crucial counterpoint. In chapters 6 to 16, the descent is a voluntary oath taken on Mount Hermon by 200 watchers. Their leader is Semjaza, not Lucifer. Their sin is lust and forbidden knowledge, not a challenge to the throne of God. The punishment is binding and imprisonment, not eternal exile to a realm of fire. This is a fall, yes, but of a completely different order. It is communal, earthly, and tied directly to the corruption of humanity. The familiar Lucifer narrative seems to borrow the emotional weight of this story. the tragedy of beings crossing a boundary, but transplants it onto a single, more philosophically convenient antagonist. Then there is one more text, a fragment most commentators skip past entirely. In the Latin life of Adam and Eve, the conflict appears from a perspective you have likely never considered. Here, the adversary's rebellion is not triggered by pride before creation, but by envy of Adam, the newly made human, after it. Hold that contradiction. If the rebellion happened because a luminous being refused to bow to a creature of mud, then the fall did not precede humanity. It was caused by humanity's very existence. That single shift moves the entire cosmic timeline. The fall didn't set the stage for human history. Human history set the stage for the fall. What kind of evil is that? Not a primordial force that pre-existed everything, something more reactive, more wounded. Turn to Isaiah 14:12-15. The passage is a taunt against a human king. The Hebrew verbs are in the past tense, referring to historical defeat. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star! You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, but you are brought down to Sheol. The early Jewish interpreters, the Targums, read this as being about Nebuchadnezzar, no angel. Now, Ezekiel 28:12-19 uses similar Garden of God imagery for the king of Tyre, calling him a cherub. Yet the text states he was on the holy mountain of God and became corrupt because of your beauty. This is where the fusion began. The mountain is Zion. The cherub is a guardian symbol. Neither passage, in its original context, describes an angelic fall from a pre-cosmic heaven. The New Testament evidence is equally telling. 2 Corinthians 11:14 calls Satan an angel of light, but does not narrate a fall. Luke 10:18 records Jesus saying, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. But this is within the context of the disciples' mission, a present victory, not a primordial event. The Book of Revelation 12:7-9 describes war in heaven and the dragon cast down, but this is apocalyptic symbolism tied to the birth of the Messiah. I spent weeks cross-referencing these verses. The word Lucifer never appears in the Greek New Testament. There is no unified origin story for the devil in the canonical texts, and that silence is itself a clue. The full-blown Lucifer myth was not yet dogma. It was still being assembled. Bring in the Book of Jubilees, chapter 10. Here, the chief of the corrupting spirits is named Mastema, not Lucifer. Mastema is allowed to retain a tenth of his spirits to test humanity after the flood. This is a negotiated settlement, not a total defeat. The narrative logic is practical. Evil persists because God permits it for a purpose. The Lucifer story, by contrast, often portrays the fall as absolute and the adversary as wholly independent. Jubilees presents a more integrated and more troubling cosmology, where spiritual rebellion is ongoing and managed, not resolved. That negotiated settlement cuts directly against the idea of a single decisive fall that set evil loose once and for all. The evidence piles up. The story is not one story, but many. Consider the theological weight of the word Satan. In the Hebrew Bible, it means adversary or accuser, and often appears as a figure within the divine council, as in Job 1:2. This Satan is a permitted prosecutor, not a rebel. The transformation of that figure into the ultimate enemy, Lucifer, required a colossal interpretive leap. The early Christian need for a coherent theodicy, a reason for evil, pressed these disparate pieces into a single mold. The lie, if there is one, is in the certainty of that mold. The texts themselves are more ambiguous, more layered, and far less interested in pinpointing a moment of first sin in heaven than the tradition that followed them. What emerges from all of this is more unsettling than the tided myth. There is no single cosmic crime scene to point to, no definitive moment where it all began. The fall of Lucifer, as a discrete event where a beautiful archangel rebelled out of pride and was cast into hell before the creation of Adam, is a theological construct. A lie built not through fabrication, but through oversimplification. The biblical and apocryphal record does not support it as a unified prehistoric fact. Instead, it offers fragments, a taunt against a king, a corrupted guardian cherub, a group of watchers taking a fatal oath on Mount Hermon, a Satan who accuses in the divine court, and an end-times dragon. The traditional story is a composite, woven together between the 3rd century BC and the 4th century AD to answer profound questions about the origin of evil. The character Lucifer became the symbol that came to bear the full weight of that answer. And when you sit with this, really sit with it, the nature of evil itself looks different. It is no longer rooted solely in a single angel's choice before time, but revealed as a multifaceted force, emerging from pride, envy, rebellion, and divine permission, woven throughout the entire narrative. Evil becomes a story with many beginnings, not one. That is what makes the question linger. The version most of us inherited flattens a complex tapestry into a simple villain origin story. It protects us from a more honest reckoning, that Isaiah was writing about a king, that Ezekiel's cherub was a royal symbol, that the watchers were never Lucifer, and that we built a unified villain out of pieces that were never meant to fit together. That was the discovery in apocryphal study that unsettled me most. It demands a real humility before the text. What remains is not a tidy answer, but something older and harder to contain. Evil as both personal rebellion and cosmic condition, reflected in broken kings, fallen watchers, and the human heart. The Lucifer figure is the mirror we hold up to that mystery. To call his fall a lie is to say we replace the mystery with a myth, one easier to condemn and harder to truly understand. The truth is messier, more ancient, and far more demanding of our spiritual intellect. That changes something practical about how we actually live with darkness. If Lucifer's fall is not the absolute starting pistol for all sin, then the struggle with shadow is not merely a footnote to a primordial angelic war. It is part of a larger, more textured drama of choice, grace, and resistance that spans heaven and earth. The weight of evil is distributed, and so is the responsibility for light. There is an invitation here, a deeper reading, where symbols breathe and history whispers through prophecy. This isn't a deconstruction, it is the tradition, in its full, untamed form, asking more of us. Return now to that first image, light fracturing, a being falling. See it differently. It is not one event but many, a collage of human failure, spiritual tragedy, and divine response woven into our sacred story. You hold this now. Will you settle for the simple lie or step into the complex, daunting, and glorious truth? If something in this shifted your understanding, go deeper. Subscribe and stay close, because the next thread in this story goes straight into who the Watchers actually were and what they left embedded in the world when they came down from Mount Hermon.